This is a photo taken at Gunnamtta Park whilst plein air painting, and basically I'm going to paint that on an A4 portrait, but I just need to show you that something as simple as that would make a wonderful artwork. So in your photographs there's lots of different areas that you could find that would still make a really successful artwork. That has everything it needs to actually be a relevant artwork. It has a point to view it. It also has a flow through the artwork. It also has a background, middle ground, foreground. It has everything it needs. So when you look at your photographs, you need to move them around. That wouldn't be that interesting. That would be getting a little bit better, but would I want a couple of rocks and some water? Probably not. I think that one's far more interesting. I'm using A4 rough paper, Arches paper. It always has a mark put on the paper every time I cut it so that I know whether it's rough, medium and smooth. Not that I can't see it, but I guess as the eyesight wanes, it's much easier just to write on it. So if you've got a stack of paper, you know exactly what you've got. Okay, so that's taped down. Taping it down, I always tape it down with just the minimum amount of area with the tape on it, almost like the photograph. And so the end of the tape has a lifting part, and that can come back up, because when it comes back round, the tape will come off straight round the paper. So I'll start out by just getting the tape on. Just check exactly what I've got there. A little bit short this side. Put it back down and have a look at it. Run my finger down so that it doesn't have any bleed back from the tape. Down this side. That's about it. And up the long side again. So it's round in the one way so that the paper doesn't buckle irregularly as well. I don't know whether that's the right word, but it can, if you tape at two sides and then the bottom, it can cause a bit of a area where the page decides to buckle. So that's actually put back down. The tape has that roll back over again, so I can always find the end. And now I'm ready to draw. Okay, so looking at the photograph, there's certain things that I need. I need to know where the building is, and the building is coming down towards the vanishing point, and the water is just coming through really nicely. But I won't actually just follow exactly what's there. I'll just start to draw. In the background there it's very complicated too, so I'll make that a little less complicated. I won't put as much in the background. So when you're painting something like this, you don't need to do absolutely everything to get a successful artwork out of it. And so that's about where the building's going to be. And so I'll measure the building. The building is, can't see the end of it. I think it's about there. It's about there, and I'll have a look at the angle of it as well. And it's about that length to the pylons that I can see that are white. And so that's where I think that is. Doesn't have to be exact, so I'll move that over. Keep it at the same angle, and that's about where my shed will be. It's a slip rail that has boats on there. And so that there is the length that is from there. The length from the edge of the page is about there, so that's the end of it. That's where it finishes, around about there. And so that line up there will be parallel. Also, I have a problem of exaggerating. So I do measure a lot because I can exaggerate quite a bit. And that makes it very difficult to get anything else in the artwork. So that's that height from the bottom of it to there. See, even that's taller than what it should be. It should be there. I'll mark that. About the other bit. I always have pencil on my artwork when I finish as well. So there'll always be some pencil. Okay, so that's at that angle. Move it up. Shift that out of the way. That's in my way. Put that back. Shift it up. And it's about that high. That'll come up to about there. and then down. And so it will go down because that's moving down that way, but this will move up slightly because of the fact that this is closer to you than that. So it will always be going back the opposite way into the horizon line. So the horizon line is probably between those two. So I'll get the top edge of that. So it's coming down about that angle, come down about that angle. Okay. I'm not going to rule it with a ruler because it gets very obvious then. Up to the top of the roof, and that will come down as well. That'll go up that way. That's pretty much straight. Okay, so that'll be behind all the leaves as well, so you won't need that much of it. This was the end of it. I'll measure it again. That was the end of it there. Yep, that's the end of it there. And so that's where your pylons are. So you'll notice that your pylons are showing different heights as it goes up the sand, and it's smaller at this end and larger at that end. So if I drew a line back down that way, that would pretty much be the line of the pylons. So I'll start to get some of those in there, fairly important. And do you have to count it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That'll do. Okay, they're not exactly. I don't think these are exactly either. And then there's the lines behind it. I'm not going to worry about anything there. That'll just be colour. So anything that I don't know, I'll just use it as colour. So this is another building that comes out past that. It's blue, and it's another building with this veranda section. It's got a boat up on there, so it must be ramps and things like that to put boats up. And there's ramps up here as well. There's a ramp up to this one, but I'm not going to do a lot to actually do that. It comes back to the second pylon, and then this takes a turn and probably goes back further. It's very hard to tell what happens there. Maybe that goes back further that way and then down the ramp. So there's another ramp behind that. So if I just start to work from what I can see, there's a railing down some of that ramp as well. So there's a railing that goes across and then down the ramp. And so even now I'm getting too involved in what I'm seeing instead of just doing part of it. There's another section coming out and another ramp that comes down to about there. This comes over to almost this edge of the page. So now I'll sort of move up from here, and it's just past there that you get the bottom of that one. That'll be straight. I don't see much angle on that at all. A little bit, just a little bit, not much at all. So that would mean that my drawing wouldn't make much difference. Okay, so it's got a double line there. It has a roof on it. Gets the building back here, so that's the part that I've got there. I think this is the front of this building, and then this one would be just a fraction higher. You can see it above that one back here. So I'll just get that idea of how high that is. And where does it come to? It comes to the second ramp. The second ramp's there. That'll be it there. It goes down towards the vanishing point that way. There's another line back there. It has a part of a veranda out. I'm going to actually just simplify it, and it has the arched roof. Goes over to that wall. On my wrist, that's the arch. Has a straight line across it there. Has a boat in there. Give it a double line at the bottom. So now you've got different lines for different things. That comes down to about there. This has got pylons under it. It's got a fairly big one there. It's got a small one over the back. Don't worry about those. There's a pylon coming underneath this ramp. The ramps have some depth to them as well, so just know that there is depth to them, meaning that they're not just a straight line. There's more to that ramp. There's two sides to the ramps. Okay, so over the back, we've got a lot of units. And so I'm going to change that and basically change it into, and again, I've come up higher than what I should. The arch is way higher than it should be, so I'm going to take it down, otherwise I've got no background. Take it down a slight amount so that I can fit something else in. Okay, so some of the other photographs have houses at the back here. Because they're units, they're very, very high, so I'll do part of what I can see. I can see something like the top of a building. I can then see part of that. Don't want it to be at the same height as the roof of the other section, so I'll do it to there. And then from there, I'll do roofs. I'll do a roof that's flat on, so we're looking at a place looking straight at us. There will be, you'll see part of this in here. There will be windows in this. There will be windows in that. What else have we got? We've got foliage and basically just another part of another building just coming into here. Maybe going back down behind. Just something in there so that you've got something to play with. Okay, so we're looking at the water line. The sand comes back down here, comes back round here, and the water's underneath here. The water's all through here, comes around and forms that shape. That sort of shape comes back around and out. And so I'm not measuring that. It really doesn't matter a great deal. I'll come back down the bottom now, just to sort of get the idea of how far up this is, and then give that a nice water's edge. Comes up to about there. Chase the pencil. And comes down through to about there. So what that needs is a nice angle of that water. Get the tissues off my hand. Comes around, gets the edge of that coming around towards me and back around in behind everything. That's one water's edge. The other water's edge is up here, around about here. So what I'll do is put this down and have a look at where this is. The water's edge is there. Comes across to about here. So I'm getting some bearings, but not a lot. So that's the sand, and the water's lapping up to that. Comes up and does a fairly good U-turn, comes around, comes towards me, comes back around to there, back around, and then too far, and then around. So the water comes around to there. So then I'll draw in some of the major rocks. That was where I got down there for no reason. This doesn't have too many frilly edges in it either that I've got. It's just the water coming down towards that with some little bits out onto the sand. And then nicely round. Okay, so rocks. The rocks themselves, there's room in here for a rock, so I don't. So I'll actually just make that go up a bit higher. Although it needs to look like it's coming back down. So it's either that or that. One or the other has to change. And so what I'll do is put the rock in first and then make it change. Just the shape of a rock. Coming up there, it has a nice dark section at the back of that rock. There's another rock beside it, and don't be that precious with the rocks because they are rocks. That's coming towards you. It has a square end on it. Back up, and that's the face of the rock at the top. That's all the oysters around the bottom of it. So just give it some shapes. Now I can actually find out where this goes around and back that way. Back to rocks. So it can have another rock behind that rock, or you can simplify it. It's up to you. It's your artwork. You can put in what you want and you can leave other stuff out. I'll bring this rock a little bit closer. I'm going to come closer with this rock. Has that square end, comes around the back of it, and I'm quickly just drawing part of it. Comes down into the water. Don't forget you've got your shadows and stuff underneath the rocks. If that's got that shape there, then it would have to be pointier at the top of the rock, I think. I don't think it's one rock, but I think that's what it's showing. It's showing more of a point on that rock. So I'll put the point back. This rock looks too big now. I've made a monster out of it. Go back and take some back. So the rock has the top edge down to the bottom of the rock, round, back up to here. That can be the bottom of the rock. Another couple of rocks. So I'll quickly just do something. This one's a very shallow rock, meaning that it's not very deep. Oyster shells, another big rock here. Coming down into the water, back up out of the water. Just roughly, just let your pencil just keep working on the paper. Now, all the greenery doesn't go on at this stage, okay? Because if I do, the drawing will be underneath the artwork. So if I do the background, then it's fine to bring this in later because it's darker than everything else that's there. Even this darkness here, I could either lift something out. I'm not going to mask it because masking is a little bit hard in the edges when you take it off. There's good reason to use masking fluid at times, but I don't think that's enough to worry about it because I could actually lift the paint off because I'm using transparent paints, and that will lift off later on. And so I'll leave that now and then get ready to paint. It's time to paint. And I'm going to start with the sky. So I'll use a little bit of cobalt blue, very lightly because it's in the distance. That was the photograph, and we'll endeavour to give you the photograph with the artwork so that you can actually work on it and reproduce it if you'd like. So a little bit of blue sky in through there, maybe a little bit of blue up through here and where the trees are. Now that'll keep a soft edge as long as I come back with a grey. It was a grey sky, very much a lot of water, a little bit of grey. Mix it up with a little bit of white, just different colours in through there. A little bit of water. Don't touch everything with the water, just some of it. Let it sort of move into that area so it just sort of touches the blue, gets the edges out of the blue, so that I don't have hard edges, and some white. So now that area there will come down to the buildings. So that's come down to the buildings, and it's still quite wet. And I usually turn my work upside down, but I'll endeavour not to do that. That goes down between those, up over that arch. I won't worry about what the sky's doing, up over that, down and join up with the other. So there's no hard edges. If I want any more grey, I can drop that in now, and that's ultramarine and burnt sienna is always my grey to my black. I'll basically work in through here, just drop a little bit more grey in. It was just a partly sunny, partly grey day. Dry the brush and move that round. If you get it too dark, there's an actual bloom in it there. I don't mind that, but I'll leave it so it just got a little bit of blue showing through because there's blue through the water. Okay, so while it's wet, I'm coming back for Winsor Yellow and ultramarine, and that will give me a dirty green at the moment, a green. But if I mix the colours together, I make one green. As I work, I'll start out with the lightest green, which is here, and see what it actually does. That comes down and will go in front of the building, just in through there and up over the top of the building. It's very, very green, but I'll let that go for a tick and then come back to it. I'll also bring the green down to here. That'll come down to the back of that. I'm not worried about what was down the back there. A little bit of light. Don't just fill it in. Just let the brush dance around and just put something in there. So now I'll go a little bit darker and get more ultramarine in it. And so now it will be darker. And so I can add other colours into it. That comes down. Don't forget your browns. That's still wet, so some of that will go up there into trees. and up and around, and now into more of the burnt sienna colour. Well, I've still got the green on the brush. What that'll do is change the colours. You can scrape across the page, but remember this is wet, so it's going to do its own thing anyway to a certain degree. Bring it across the top of the building there, let it go up into the sky, because there's trees all behind here. So the idea is to capture your scene by what you're putting in the sky. Don't do it as a straight line, but I want to get round there. Around to there, I'll go back to green. The brush is still dirty. Doesn't have to go up above that building, but not too much here. I've got the leaves to go in there later. Just find the top of that building, drops down to this building. So now that's just running wild, which is good. And I'll keep going darker. I need something down the front here, so I'm just going to wet that, let it go into just water so that I can just play in colours. Put some browns in, put something in there. It still will be very light. That can go over the side of the building. And water. And that'll bring me back down to where the water is, I think. Just let it go. Up into the sky. Now that's getting dry, so I can do more with that and give it a little bit more of a skyline. A little bit of the green plus a bit of brown, but more green than brown. And I'm just going to come up into here and just get the top of something that would look a little bit more like greenery and that in here, up into the dry areas of the sky. That'll give me some distance between that and a little bit more ultramarine on the brush, and I'm just going to work around here, and that's where this area there is somewhere, the edge to that. Just find the edge to that and drop some other greens in. Back into here, could have a little bit of darker green in that, and other bushes up the top there. Change that and get that into something that will just take me out of the picture. And so now I've just got greenery up there. Anything else I need? I need to find my buildings, need to find my roof, my sky. This one here, I don't want to see that. That's too close to where those other trees are going to be, so I'll just wet the top of it, and that just takes it out, but it just gives you the top of the building. Okay, so if I wanted any light back in there, I could just simply put the brush down, and that would give me some light back, just to lighten in through there. That looks like trees in there. I'd leave that. Don't try too hard. If you try too hard, you come up with something that's really very ordinary. Through the back here, there's the buildings, and so I'll just give those a wash at this stage. Light brown for this building. I can leave a white awning on it. That's just lightened that out. This building's white, but it has bits and pieces in there, lots of different things. The water goes underneath it, so I'll introduce the water soon, and then the darks after the water. So I'm coming into the inside of this area, and you can see that there's parts of that are actually in buildings, and so there's a building there. So I'm just going to make that colour. Just put a light on it, leave it there, leave a bit there, just something in through here. There's other bits and pieces through. There was a boat in there. I'm not doing that. That's too much information for what I'm doing. And then there will be bits and pieces of a sandy colour. So I'll use the colour that I made for the sand, and it was June Brilliance number 1. June Brilliance number 1 is a lovely colour to work with. It's an opaque. And so also I have Naples yellow. Then it has a little bit of rose madder in it, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of grey. So I've just worked and worked and worked until I've roughly made myself a colour that represents the sand. But do that first so that you've got that colour to play with. And that'll go into here between these pylons. So there's some there that stays light, some there. Just between the pylons, leave the pylons, and I can come back to those later. And also I'll put greenery in there so that you can see the trees through there as well, to join up where those trees are, just to get some green in as well. There's greenery there, just colour. That's all that is just a group of colours and just something that you can see through there. You see it through the roof as well, so I'm just going to actually leave the roof white. So I'll just put that in and then come in with some soft colours as well. Just the sandy colour, drop that in, the burnt sienna, make that where it's darker there. And now you're starting to see that. All I want to do is see parts of it. I don't care what colour it is, just see parts. There's also the awning here that's yellow, so I just went round it. So if you want to make something a colour, go round it and leave it the colour. The blue of the sky now can go on this building, and so that's down, missed that one, down through there and up across here. Now I want it to disappear into the other building because the greenery's over it later, so that's wash the brush, dry it, and just take the edges off it. That just gives me that building. This one can stay basically white. The building at the back can become a little bit of a sandy colour down the back section of it, which is there. Now if it runs into the other one, I don't care. Just let that go on there, just a little bit on the top, and leave the front of it white. Okay, I won't shift that because that's going to be where the leaves are over the top later. And so now I'm going to start on the water. And the water has cobalt blue and also phthalo mixed in it. Too much phthalo. The two colours together, I'll go back for more cobalt. Now I don't care what colour it is now that I've done that, but it has to be light. Goes in behind here and joins up with the rest of it there. So that can go over that. Leave that actual ramp. Leave the next ramp. Water. So over here is very, very light. Goes underneath that as well. Try not to leave too many squares in it though. It's a little bit dark here, so I'll just get water and wash across it. Let it do its own thing. Down to the sand. Now the sand comes in and there's a little gap between the two of those, so it doesn't matter which one you do first, but I'm going to stop there with the water because I want to get the sand organised. So the water stopped by just water. Just water brought in there, that sand, that goes up underneath there. Keep that flat. Okay, what happened there? It does a little bit of a cauliflower, the colour's changed. So I'll just come back and get those off. Alright, so now we start into the sand. I wanted to get the sand here. It's a bit of a light colour before the sand, and then the edge comes round as the sand, and I wanted to get that lovely shape in that. So I'll pick up the sand colour, and the sand's the darkest about there, so that's where I'll put my brush, and I'll get some paint on there, sand colour, and then water. So the water will come up to here, and then it comes around. So with the brush will come round, wash that out. I don't want that colour, I just wanted more paint there than anywhere else. That comes around and gets very, very silvery as it comes towards me. Could have a little bit more colour. So now I can introduce the colour that I want. I'll get it darker through here. A couple of darker places. So it's got some interest in the sand. It also has light and dark up here. So it has some dark coming into that. So now I can actually get that to happen in light and dark on the sand. Over the other side here, it's got a lot of rubbish on it. So I'll put that in. Let it go into that water there. Went over my pencil, which is not good. And there's lots of rubbish on here. So just get some paint on. What's happening here? There's a track across there. Somebody's walked across and left a track. it's just darker in that colour. So I'll just sort of start to get that through. It's a bit dark, so I'll stop. Goes through and goes over the back. They've walked over to the water. Now that was a little bit wet when I did that, so I'm going to take it out. Don't have to put up with it. Put a bit of colour back. Wait for it to dry a little bit and then come back. The part that's got all the rubbish over here, if I pick up a soft brush, a sable, with some of the ultramarine and burnt sienna that will make a dirty brown, and just cover that area there. Oops, that area there. And on a downward stroke, not enough water on it. Hang on, I'll see if I can get that better angled. Not enough water, not enough paint. That will give me a little bit, hang on, a little bit of rubbish on there. Okay, so that's just spots I know at the moment, but I'll get my synthetic brush, dry it off, and just give it a scrape across. So it'll muck that area up. I can come back to it later and get a little bit more detail in it, but it's got some mess on it so that I can work with that later. The footprints, I'll see how damp it is now, and if I get some drier paint, I've just got the browny sort of colour. No, it's still too much. Okay, I'll get a rigger. A rigger doesn't hold as much water, and basically then will allow me to get that less paint on it. This one's better. The other one was too dry. Get some paint on, and now I'll see what I can get. Okay, that's a little bit better. Heads across the, and that sort of shows the angle of that. Dry brush. What don't I like about it? I don't like it there, don't like it there. Just muck it up, just a fraction. You can see what's there. And that will give you just the look of something coming across the water. The sand, sorry. Can take some out if I want to soften it a little bit. Take some out so you can't see it too clearly. Okay, so we're ready to come down with the water. And so the water underneath here is dark. Now, as much as it looks dark, I can still add darks to it, but then come back and get the lights back so that it looks like it's too dark, but it won't be later, because these pylons can be put in as dark as well as light. But if I put darks in now and then come in underneath them later, I can still get that to happen. So I've got the grey, and so I'm just going to go straight underneath that and get that underneath. That's where they are. Underneath the back here, there's a couple of dark sections. Just get those in. A couple more darks underneath that to hold the place up. I've got an Escoda brush, which gives me a reasonable direction, but not a lot. So that's okay as well. There's that pylon, that one. Down through here, I'm going to lighten that in a minute. There's a couple here that come down into the water, and then you've got the lines of this coming through. Now I don't want to do everything with lines, but I'll do a couple of them with this brush. It won't be straight, won't be anything, but it gives you the idea of what's there. So instead of doing everything perfectly, this can come down into the water now. Just put water on it, let it come down, that'll soften it. Now later on I can come back in through there and get the pylons in through there. These pylons are in the water, so now I can take their ends off. Just the ends of them there where they hit the water, and just leave them in the water instead of just seeing the ends of them. That'll just leave them in there, and you'll see just colour through the water, just the brush. Okay, so moving down through to the water. The water is changing colours as it comes down through here. It's almost a strange sort of colour down through there, because you've got darker colours, you've got the greenery that's up here, parts of that. So try and match your scene. Don't match the photograph if your scene doesn't match it. So mine starts out with some green down through the water, and it's slightly brown. There's brown first and then the green. So if I come in with the colour I used for the sand, I could get some sand first, just a little bit of sand first, then the actual greenery. So that goes down the house and across the roof, and then the greenery that's in the water. So I'll just let it do that. That's the edge of that, that's the edge of the roof, that's the greenery. The greenery goes up fairly high, so now I've sort of matched the greenery. In through here it's a little bit of a purpley blue. So if I pick up blue and put a little bit of rose madder in it, it'll go a little bit purple. Purple meaning that purple will make it grey. Now it's a bit too purple, so I'll pick up more blue and put in it. Doesn't have to be dark. Yeah, didn't get enough blue. Okay, so now it's a different colour. So that's going to come in here, go up to that, into here. So I'll get it into there in a minute. In round there. And I'm just going to leave a little bit of a light edge between the two. That'll come down to around about here and then go into water. So I'm just going to do it bit by bit. That disappears up into the top water. That goes round that corner. That comes over and down. And so you've still got it with the colours coming through, but if you touch it with your brush like I just did, it's going to muck it up. So what you need to do is come back and just put water through it. When I want to stop, I stop with water. And then I can start again. Keep it on an even keel. It has to be parallel to the page, otherwise your water starts to tip up, and it's got to be that direction. So those brush marks in it will help to get the different things that you want in there. The greenery up there is not really noticeable. There's a couple of darks that come into the water here, and I don't know what they are, but I'll put them in. Probably the posts. They're probably the posts of the actual building. Put them in. Then we go into a very blue patch. So now we get to show our beautiful blue. I don't think my beautiful blues anymore. I think I've mucked it up. So I'm just going to go back with more paint. Cobalt. Phthalo. Blue. Lots of water. The lots of water bit is just to keep it moving, because I can then change it to whatever I want as I go. So don't leave it too long. Lots more water. It comes down to about here. Just get your angles of where you're going to. Leave that light edge. I'll deal with that later. This was a light area through there, so I'm just going to wet it. It'll leave a little bit of cauliflowers, that's all right, don't care. Very light over here. Very light is almost all water. It's quite blue. Keep it on that angle. Goes into white. White is water. Just wet it. It's got a little bit of colour, but that's all right. Just wet it, come forward. Almost water through there. I see a little bit of a pinky colour in the water there. I'll use a little bit of the mauve. A little bit of the mauve in through there. My blue has just got a straight stretch in it. I'll move that up and I'll move this down. So now it has colours through there over the rocks. We don't care about the rocks at this stage. Then we get very blue in through here. So I'll come back here and join it up. Very blue. In through there to the water's edge. That'll be the water's edge with the back of the brush. That's over that rock. Over those rocks. Very light. Almost water over here, up to that light area there. Just get it all wet. It's probably better doing the edge of this with the back of the brush because it does it softer. Get this to go into the rest of the water. Can leave some darker blue on some of the rocks. Okay, so we've got the water coming towards us. Now we've got the sand down through here. Might be able to play in the sand a little bit more down here. Okay, the colour of the sand's changed. It's gone to the edge of this section of paint, which means that it's a bit strange, but that's all right. I'll bring it in here then when the greenery is and start to come in through there. Every now and again I'll touch the water, just so it's not a really hard line. The sand's darker as it comes towards you, but I must admit the colour's changed dramatically. So now I'll go to a lot of water then. Scrub around. It's a synthetic brush, so it takes a bit of punishment. That's darker over there. Don't mind that, it's got the leaves to go over so don't get too dark. And I'll actually, because it's darker there, I'll darken into this corner, just to sort of bring you closer to this edge. Okay, so the water looks transparent through here. It has just an edge of that sandy colour in here. I think mine looks a bit too bright, so I'm just going to grey it down with that mauve that I made and just put a bit of sand in there. It'll be just a piece of sand in through there. Okay, so that can dry. I can get some texture in here, and that will be a very, very dry brush with burnt sienna and a little bit of indethrin on it. Dry the brush as much as you can, and I'll just scrape across. We're on rough paper, so it'll give me something on that sand. That's what I'm after, something like that on the sand. And then I'll get some of the actual, while it's wet, it'll give me some texture, but then when it's drier, it'll give me a little bit more interest in that sand, and that'll get me closer. There's more colour, it's closer, a little bit like a camera. More detail here than up the back, so I don't want to detail the back too much either. So it's up to sort of the imagination or what you can see up there, but I will detail, but very little. So now I'm looking at this section here. I'm going to get a toothbrush and pick up some paint on that toothbrush. Now that'll be too dry because it's very, very dry. If it's too wet, you'll just get splattered everywhere. That's just some colour. Sorry, the camera's mucking around. And just on that, I'm going to start to get some texture in that. Doesn't matter if it goes in the water a bit. It's too wet because I can't see it. I'll hold the desk if I can. Okay, so now it's browner. That's better. Okay, so as that goes, I can keep going until I get the depth of colour I want. I don't want to fill it in completely, but I do want the depth of colour. I need a little bit more water, but I'm not going to dip it in the water because that's going to give it too much. I'll paint some on it with a brush. And as I'm working, this is drying anyway. That'll give me the texture that I need on the sand. Could get some of it up there as well, just a little bit. That'll match so that you're looking around. If I'm doing it there, I possibly could get a little bit on the sand there, just for something a bit different so that your eye will actually look around the work. Don't know what that is. Okay, so I'll leave it there and let it dry and then come back to detail it. Now that the artwork's dry, it's time to do some more detailing, just slightly. My paint is now dry, so that's a good thing. I'm just going to pick it up with a brush, just damp, and see how dark it is. It's not very dark at all, and just start to work from the left to the right to start to get some detail in. I've just put a line of paint in there, a window in there, maybe one below it, a little one in the side of the place, and it's just the dry paint, just doing enough on there just to note that there's something there. Could put the veranda in. There's a veranda that goes across it, but that's enough. no great, that's rubber on there I think, no great amount of work. The actual shade that goes over here, or maybe it's roof, I'm not sure what it is. It's at such a distance I'm not even going to check. Just get the rubber off it. I'm just going to put some grey on it just to grey it down so it's not white. And so moving on to this area here, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's only the unit behind it there, so that's where I'll start again. I'm just in the burnt sienna and ultramarine, that now it's like a browny sort of a colour, and I'll just pick up places where I can see something. That there, I'll put that down, and then I'll put that down further in there. So now you're seeing through this building. If I didn't do that, you wouldn't see anything. There's greenery there, so whether we see greenery or not, I didn't really particularly want to. So what I'll do is just brush marks, just at random, just brush marks that you can't tell what it is, but there's something in there. There's a window in the back here. Oops, a bigger window than I wanted. And then there's the top of the building. So to show the top of the building, I'll just put a line on the top of it. There could be a window in that side going down that way. That brings me to here. It's got a bit of a lump in it there. Would I worry? Not at that distance. I'm not going to start getting in there and doing too much work. Okay, so coming over, there's a yellowy sort of a awning, and I'll use the same colours that I had for the sand just to put that in. Just that through there. And the building itself is just a light bluey grey, just water. So I'll bring that in on the building. It's more of a grey, not much of a blue. That'll do. Just some colour on it to the corner, and then there's part of the building. So now there's an actual section in there that must have a glass door, and just bits across it just to show the front of that. I can leave the white there, no need to take that away. I'm going darker now to get the edge along the roof. Just a little bit of the edge, and dry the brush, and the brush can do the rest of that, just to get that along. Over the back of that building, whatever it is, there's a couple of ramps. Would I bother? Not really. I'll start to work on the colour. This is burnt sienna and indethrin. That makes a darker colour. And remember I said that underneath here, I'd start to get the shadow in through here. So that was dark. There's a shadow underneath the water here. That one's back further, so I'll bring that in. Bring that one in to get the edge to the water. There's a shading underneath here that goes right underneath the building. So I'm just going to bring that in. It's fairly dark, but I can lighten it as I go. That sort of shows the squareness of that building that's on there. Just bring it across to that one. And continues up underneath here. So I'll make that darker underneath the ramp there. Down to that post. Then I'll go into the water. That'll be dark underneath there. That's all dark. And so I'll just make a line there. Now I'll wash the brush and dry it and get that to come in underneath those ramps. That'll go along there. And there's the shadow underneath the ramps as well. So there's one shadow there. Soften that. That'll make the shadow to that ramp show up. Lighten that. That's just the shape of that building. So I'm just wetting that, and that can just go out into the water. And so that's the darks underneath the building. And then we've got the posts. So the posts, then I can just go down the posts. I think that was the first post, second post, third post, lost the posts. There's 1, 2, 3 here somewhere. 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, that's the post I've got now. Okay, so then I'll bring the line down here at the edge of that, where it goes into along the sand. that you'll get that dark underneath there. Now you don't have the other side of the post, so I'm just going to come down lightly with the other side of the post. Not as dark as the other side, just down to that wet paint. Now I'm getting between the posts, leaving the posts. Supposedly leaving the posts. The posts are dark. Lost track of the posts. Just put some paint in there now. I don't have a clue what happened up there. Okay, but you can see that there's posts underneath the veranda of that place. There's also a ramp going up away from it. I'll pick that up. There's a ramp going up here that leaves a couple of posts. A couple of posts there and a railing, something else going up there. And I'll leave that there. That's too strong. You can see that too much, so I'll just wet over that. I don't want to see anything that clear right up the back there. Okay, so it's going to have all the actual leaves over the top of that later. So we're getting onto this edge here, which was supposed to be water. It doesn't look like water, so I'll pick up the blue, and this is the edge to the water. So I'm going to put the edge back to the water. That's it there. Now you know that's the water. Take that out. And so now you'll see the water going out of the picture that way. It's darker over here. There's some browns over through there. So I'll go back to burnt sienna and just pick up the colour through there. There's just the shadow of this through. Now I'll dry the brush on a tissue and then see if I can get it just to pick up some of the edge of the paper. That will give me that look of, it's got to be parallel. Don't do it all in one spot. So you'll start to see something on the water there. If the water's bluer, I can pick that up, but I'll only pick it up in places. I won't do it everywhere. I'm just going to pick the water up stronger here and put just over that went into there, over there, and then stop it. Water. That will put that into the water. Okay, so the water goes around, comes back around this way. There's also some marks around that way. I'm not sure that's not too wet now, but across the purpley look, there was a bit of the blue, cobalt blue, with a little bit of rose madder. I made a sort of a purple. Hasn't made purple yet. It's got something. And that can go across the water here. Keep it parallel. That will put the top back on the water. As I said, don't do too much of it. You'll overdo it. The green that's up around the building, that come from the sand down. Now that's wet at the moment, so I'm just going to dry that with a tissue. I don't want to touch it when it's that wet. But it comes down this way in the water. So that's where you see that coming from. You'll see light and dark. I need it to be straight just where the building is, just there. Okay, so then I'll actually just ease off a little bit and just brush with the brush, and the brush is dry. I just need to get that bit off. That's better. Can still have lines coming down it. Goes into the edge of the building that way. But now I've got that line a little bit more clearer than what it was, and I'll drag that down up to the top where the green was. I need to get it clean at the edge of the page. I don't like seeing the white. Okay, so then I'll move on and come back. And I don't have the brown that we've got up the top there, because in the photograph it has a lot of brown, but I don't have that. I've done it more to the green that I've actually done myself. So now we're moving on to the water. And so I've got two choices. I can either do the downstrokes, which there's some there in grey, a very light grey, and this is an Escoda brush I'm using. And the reason for that is that on work that I'm doing like this, if I actually roll the brush, I've got the most beautiful point. That brush has been used for a couple of years, and it's still got a beautiful point and can still do really great work. And I'll see what colour that is first. I've got a piece of paper beside me, a piece of watercolour paper. so I can check what colours I'm picking up. It should be a light grey, and it should be just a straight line and very, very light in the water. You see a couple of lines down the water here. Just don't make them equal. You'll see that happening. But if there's too many of those, it'll stand the water up. So I need to come back for the blue now. And so I'm working my way down. You can see how I'm working. Blue, tissue, brushes split, and see if I can get something across the water. Very, very low, but still picking up the edge to the water. That can come back over that as well. Okay, so it's coming towards me. I've got the sand, but you can't see it's the sand. I don't recognise that as sand. So what I'm going to do is get an outline around a part of that. If I do the top, it'll probably make it look like it's round and flatter if I do the top and part of it around. If I only do the bottom, it'll make it look like it's sort of sitting out of the water. So I'll just wet it. I'll wet it, the shape sort of that I want. And I'll just get the rigger and just the sandy colour, was just the dirty sandy colour. And I think the brush is dirty anyway. And see what happens here if I can get out to an outside edge. That'll go out to that edge, out to that edge. And that's just sand that's sitting up out of the water. Now it should just look like there's sand there. What happens with the water? The water comes up on it, but you can't see that. It's just a blob at the moment. So I need to get more water to come in through there and not see the edges of it. So there's a couple of ways to do that. You could wet it first and not know where you've wet it, or put it in and be really quick with wetting it after that. So I'm just going to get the blue here to get onto that, to take out that edge of it. And that's what I said about wash your brush, take out the edges of that paint, and you won't even know that you've put it in there. So that's actually got a better shape. Not that excited about it because the bottom edge needs to disappear. So I'll make it disappear and just go into where that sand is supposed to be. So now I'm taking out the bottom edge. Put the blue back. If I keep going, I'll dig a hole. Don't want to do that, but I'll wait till this dries and come back on that edge again. Okay, so moving down through here, I've got blue sky up here, but I don't have blue sky down here. So that's what I'm going to do next, other than then start working through here. It's got some darks, a darker colour in through there. Even though it looks transparent and there's stuff underneath the water, I'll start to get that on as well. And so in through here, it's slightly bluer on mine. So I'm just going to pick up the blue again, put it in there, get it between those rocks, bring it down through those rocks and in through here. And there's a little bit of a pattern of water that's actually doing that sort of thing, got an edge in it. That'll go out, so you can see that the water's actually got a pooling sort of effect. That's the shadow on the rock, so I can make that up just a little bit further and just get that to come around. And then there's some darks underneath that. So with the blue, I'll start to make a darker colour. It's just a dirty colour now, and bring that into the water. And so that'll just go in there somewhere, in through there. There's some dark underneath that rock, wherever that rock is. This is not the shadows, I'll put those in later. That comes around in through here and up through there. So now I'll actually take out the edges of that, meaning that I don't want that edge. Don't mind what happens there, don't want that edge. Come through here, soften that, soften this. Now that's under the water, so it still should have the water over it. Losing my water, I've run out of water. But the water will go back over that. And so now you've got bits and pieces of stuff that's come into the water here, and it's darker than what it was. Just playing that for a bit. Okay, it's got some marks in it. That's okay, because I'll still come back and work into that water when I'm finished. Okay, what happened over here? We still need the edge to that sand, and so it's darker than what the water is. I don't know whether it's dry, but I'll see if I can get that colour through the sand. Just at the bottom of that. Water, just to get it so that you don't see that you've got just that edge there. If it's a straight line, it'll be better than if I round it up, or it'll make it look like it's a donut sitting there. All right, I'll leave that alone for this stage. There's some other rocks to go in here. There's also a little bit of a shading down the edge of the water. So now I've just got a darker colour in the sand colour I had originally. And so that can come in around here. That'll come in through there. Don't make it a straight edge. Make it go up around the water. And then take out the back of it, meaning that edge. That edge disappears, so you've just got the water's edge darker where it's coming around. Okay, so now I can actually start to work on the rocks. This bit here, I'll come back to that because it's got shells in it, it's got bits and pieces in it. They'll come by actually coming back round through there. If your work looks patchy, which this does because it's wet at different rates, I'm just going to come back and run through there over the top of it and smooth that out because it looks too rough. The rocks will take over, they'll be okay there. But I'm just going to soften that through. If I come out of there, I come out that way, come out flat. Okay, I've got a bit of a mark there, but if I keep rubbing, this brush is very rough. If I keep rubbing and have enough water on there and it gets all the same wetness, it'll take a lot of that marking out of it. I can go over that rock. All right, that's a lot softer than it was. What happens over here? That goes right up to the edge of the water, so I'll get rid of that line as well. That can go up to the water. You don't want that line everywhere, so every now and again I'll take out this line so that it's just not showing funny shapes. Like that shape, don't like that. Can leave that. Come around here and get that to have a better shape. So now you're not seeing just that line. I'll put some more blue in there. Right up to the edge of the water in places. Again, I'll lose the white that's there if I keep going down, so I'm not going to do that. I'll go back up. Okay, so this was white here too, so I'm going to go back and take that out. That was supposed to be white and it's actually gone darker. So if I go back with water, that will change that as well. Okay, so the other thing you'll see is some downstrokes in parts of it, but I'll leave that at this stage. I'll just rub over that with a tissue and see what happens. That's better. Okay, much better, because I'm getting the lights back. You always want to retain your lights. Okay, so I'll let that dry and then come back to it for the finishing off of the rocks and the greenery around. Moving down to the rocks, down the bottom of the artwork, I'm going to use raw sienna and just make a colour similar to the rocks. Just a raw sienna sort of colour, and raw sienna, a little bit of the greying down mix, which would be burnt sienna and indethrin. That will grey them down so that they won't be too rich in colour, and then water. So the rocks are going to have a wash of colour on them, just the lightest value of the rocks, just roughly. The rock will come down, and then under the rock, I need to warm that up a little bit, so I'll put a little bit of rose madder in that. Just let it drop into there. And then the rock has the shadow underneath it, so I'm going to do the rock and the shadow at the same time, so they'll match. A little bit too much in colour, probably a little bit of burnt sienna in places, just something to make the rock a little bit different to just the straight paint. Fair bit of water. There's a rock here that's very, very light, very, very flat rock there. Make it look like it's flat. A lot of the time I leave my pencil on the work as well. There's the pencil line. And don't worry about the pencil at all. Just put it in. I can't even see what I've drawn. But anyway, I'll put another rock there, touching that rock. And just the colour. I can see a rock here. There's a couple of rocks. There's one there. One in front of it, quite a big rock. Comes down, it shadows underneath it. Comes up to like the point of the rock. And just painting the complete colour of the main colour on the rock. So you'll find as a watercolourist, I always look for the lightest value on what I'm painting and then add from there. Now there's other rocks here that I can't see what I've got. I've got a light, put a rock in it, bit of a shadow in it. So when I come back to put the darks on the rocks, I'll basically work from the top, leave the top of the rock, the colour it is, and just lighten that one a little bit. It's way too dark. And then add the darks on the face of the rock so that you've got the section to the rocks that's got the darks on it. Okay, so there's something else that's a bit of a problem. There's a bit of a little lump in the middle of that there, the actual part of the roof, and it's annoying. So I'm just going to take that out and then use that paint to put some texture in that background. I don't usually go back to the background, but I will to get that out because it's just standing out. Okay, so while these are partly wet, I can still keep painting. The water over the back, I'm just going to get cobalt and have a look at some of that going through here over this area. And so I can bring it in through there. I'm just getting direction up through here and over that area. I want that to look like you can see that under the water. And so I'll then just take out the edges of what I've done. And so you'll see some strong water and you'll see it go around the corner. I want the viewer to see that it goes round. So now that sort of shows that it's going around and it's got water on it. So anywhere that there's anything that I can pick up, I'll pick it up and then get it in there so that it just sort of shows different colours. Round through the water here, you might see something a bit stronger. It can go into the rocks. Don't care about the rocks. I'll just get part of the water to be a little bit stronger as it comes around there. And out of the picture, it comes out here. Just a little bit in through there. Now that just gives you the indication of that there's stronger water as it's coming closer to you. It's not in the photograph, and I'll put the photograph up so that you can see the photo as well and have a go at reproducing the artwork. Now the rocks. The rocks will be burnt sienna and French ultramarine. You can do any colours you like, doesn't matter. And that's quite thick paint, too thick actually. So I'm just going to get a little bit off the brush, dry the brush, and pick it back up again because it's too thick. And when I say dry the brush, sometimes I load the brush and then just put it on a tissue to get it to be a little bit drier. And then I can actually come around the rocks. Now this is still wet, so that's going to be interesting. But it's just going to run up around the rock, down around the rock. And then you'll get the actual water line. And then I can add a little bit of burnt sienna to it, a little bit of colour, a little bit of texture to it. We know it's got, some have got oysters on them. Back to the darks on the rocks, pick the paint up. This is always my dark palette. I do change occasionally, but burnt sienna and French ultramarine and indifferent. So it's a brown grey, a blue grey, a dark grey. And so that'll make your colours sort of stand out. Around the edge of the rock there, I'll stop trying to just paint and let loose if I can. That's the best way to attract this. That's better. That's much better. Just let it slide on. That's not it. There's another one there. Another one there. Now I'm just going to wet the top of that. Just keep it wet. Tame it down a little bit. It's a little bit too strong. Then I'm going to use the palette knife to just push some of that paint out of the way. So that top paint is still a little bit damp. That'll just change those rocks and make them a little bit more character in the rocks. And not just the paint that's left there. This one's dry. So is that one. Now they'll just re-wet and you'll be able to do something with them. They look a little bit more interesting and not just the rocks sitting there as they were. They've now changed. There's another couple of little rocks sitting around, so I'm just going to pick up colour and just put those in behind that rock. There's a couple of small ones. Little bits and pieces showing up in the water. Okay, so it's got a mixture of messy rocks. They are messy, you can see that, and bits and pieces of shadows, so that it's not just painted exactly as you'd imagine, copying just the rocks on there. So then that can dry, but I'll come in and I'll actually do the edge of the page. I was using a mop brush. These are mop brushes that I've had for many, many years, and they've got a bit of a rounded end on them, and that'll help to shape the actual foliage that I'll put on the edge of the page. There's another one that I'm missing. There's another longer one. It's not it. This must be it. All right, so just, it fans out. So when you put it down, it fans, and I've got Winsor yellow and indifference over here. And I'll start to get in around here. Now, if it runs, I don't care. So it'll just go partly over that corner, even though I like some of the corner. I'm not just covering things either. I'm just sort of planning where that's going to go around the edge. And I'll start to come up here. Just make sure the edge of the tape's down, and just put the brush down and start to dance the brush. A little bit less, a little bit more. Change colour. Oh, that's dark. That's good. Don't worry about it. And come back in, Winsor Yellow, Indethrin. Leave some of that blue showing through there. And I'm looking at this edge as well. So they'll come up and they're a bit lighter over here, a little bit smaller. So I'll change brushes and go down to a smaller one, same sort of brush, but smaller. That'll give me a different look. Keep dancing over the rocks. Wasn't dark enough, so I put some over it a little bit darker. Some more light. Just start working out to the corner of the page here. Now I'll get my Skoda, which is the synthetic brush, and start to get more paint in this corner. Don't want to take the corner out completely, but I want to get to the edge of the page. Put some burnt sienna in it. It won't all come just in the one colour. Getting too many colours now, but I'm looking at the shape. Okay, so I'll get the larger brush again. Get a couple of pieces together, just some light through there. Take out the corner. That's the main thing I want to do, is get into this corner and out to the edge of the page. Okay, so it's got a fairly large area of the green, and I'll come through with a rigger and some of the branches and that through there, and they'll just be flecked through there. So I'll just put some rubbish in to start with. That's just sheer rubbish. Can have some bits sticking out. Just let the brush dance. And people go, but my brush doesn't dance like your brush. But it will if you just keep working and not thinking about it. Just let it go. There's some branches to come over here, and these branches I'll put into the light. Because I've got room that I can do that, I can just get a couple of branches out through here that will then notice that you're coming into the artwork. So it's actually surrounded that edge. Now, if I went to there, I'd probably come up, I wouldn't go halfway, I'd probably come a little bit below halfway and start again with the larger brush. And so I've got my hand there so I know where I'm going. Winsor Yellow, Indethrin, and I'm coming in. Now, how's it growing? It's coming into there at that angle. Over that rock, didn't like him. Comes out of there, soft. Comes down, and this is going to be a smaller area. Let it come out of the page. Soft meaning that you've got just the greenery coming in. It just looks a little bit too planted, that it's just there sitting straight on the edge. It becomes thin at the edges and then heavier. So what I'd need to do with that is everything needs to be thinking of when somebody's looking at this artwork, what are they seeing? They're seeing that harsh area there. And so what I'm going to do is come up and just do something else a little bit further up. So it looks like the two areas are together, but they're not just hit hard and then nothing. And so the branches will come into that. And then I've got greenery up the top. Okay, so that's the branches come into that. You might see a couple of branches, not too many. Which way is it going? Out that way. Come off the tape before you come onto the paper, and it'll look a little bit more realistic. And then up the top, it comes down from the top. Quite often if I'm painting down, I'll turn my page around and work at the top. So that comes onto the page there. And I'll turn my photograph upside down. After I finished, I'll put that on there so you can see what the reference material was. And that'll come down onto here. I don't want to take out too much of this, just a little bit of it. So the sky's great there. There's building. There's a nothing section through here. Put a bit more water on my brush for this, just to keep it a little bit softer. It's further up the artwork. Don't want it as big as what it does look like. Anchor it to the page. Bring it to the greenery. That'll make it sort of join in together. Take out some of this top section. Don't want to see that. Don't want to take out the blue sky. It's one colour, so I know I need to add some darks. Some strength. And that's just flicking the brush around. Getting something up there that makes you look. That's a bit dark. So instead of actually playing in that, I'll dry the brush and take the escoda and get back up there. Some branches. There's a branch coming down that way, down to there. Again, it's very tight. Tight means that it's just there and nothing else. So what I'm going to do is just soften out the edges, even with water, and get that to have some soft edges as well. Could come back in again, just with some soft paint. So it shouldn't all be a great deal of impact. You should have some softness coming out as well. Don't need light at the edge of the page. Okay, so I'll turn it around and see what I actually did, because I can't see upside down, and that's part of the plan, because we were looking through trees while we were here. Now there's some other bits and pieces. You've got a choice of whether you put them on light or dark. There's a lot of boats over the back over here, and they've got silver masts. You could do that. Sometimes I use a gel pen. You can get archival gel pens, and they'll stay very, very long lasting, but a lot of stuff's not. But sometimes if I've got something that I want to have, like I've done salt work, then I use Preserve It, which is a Krylon product. It's from Spotlight. Usually they say they haven't got it, but it's in a cabinet now, locked away, so where all their spray cans are. So if I'd actually use salt on this, I'd spray the front and the back to keep it long lasting, and that should be on all your photographs that you print on your printer. So I'll just take the tape off, and then you'll be able to see the artwork. This tape should come off straight the way around, because that's how I've actually put it on. So then you see the artwork without all the paint on the tapes, and now you're looking into the artwork. Now I said I'd put the photograph down so that you then can see the difference between the finish work. But the last thing I'm going to do is pick up the darks again and just dance around on the rocks, just in a couple of places, so it looks like you can see light and dark on the bottom of those couple of rocks. This one's just gone all over the place, but that's all right. I don't try and manipulate absolutely everything, because the viewer's eye's got to do some work. You can't just spell it all out for them. So I'll just take some of that off. It's got a little bit dark. Don't be afraid to give it a dab, but don't become a dabber. Don't dab everything you see. When this dries, I'll actually just reshape just the bottom of that rock, and have a look at this one. Don't mind the rest of them. They've naturally sort of settled down. And the last thing I'll do is put this on top so that if you want to take a photo of that, you can see the source work. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. That's Gunnamtta Park, Cronulla.